Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to another podcast. It's been a while, but we have two illustrious people here to speak to you about all the things that have happened since we've been gone. This is another version of We Ask You to Think. It's a Sunday morning. It is still morning here in the East Coast. It is super morning on the West Coast, which is why we're missing one of our West Coast topics. But let's get started and talk about the things that there are in the world. My name is Jeff Wheeler. I'm here under the shadow of the Gold Dome in illustrious and lovely downtown Atlanta, Georgia. Let me introduce my co-host, Tom Holm from New York City. Tom, say good morning.
Good morning.
And there he is. So we have a action-packed and topic-filled morning for you. I don't know if you're going to be able to listen to all of this because we have so much information to espouse. I'm just going to be plowing right through it. Is that a farmer
Into
term?
you like a train.
Oh, I like what you did there. Okay, so first and foremost, we have historically made this an election/political type podcast. And so let's start on the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is the current election cycle. There are two major candidates in front of us today, Hillary Rodham Clinton and Donald, no idea what his middle name is,
Trump. I don't
Donald,
know what J stands for.
Like a J-A-Y or like a J letter?
J letter.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what the J stands for.
Maybe James.
Jesus?
No.
Donald Jesus Trump?
Jingoistic. No, that's with a G.
Jingoistic.
That's with a G.
Oh, that's racist.
Right.
What? Jingo, isn't that a racial slur?
No,
isn't that an epithet?
No, it's not an epithet.
Okay.
Jeez,
I don't know how to pronounce that word very well. So, Donald Trump and Hillary Rodham Clinton. So I will pose a question to you. Is this election primarily a stop the other person election? Because what I hear in the resonance chamber of my life is half of the people that are politically minded and outspoken are, well, there's no way I'm going to vote for X candidate. And then the other half is saying, there is no way I'm going to vote for Y candidate, so I have to vote for X candidate. Is that where we are in this place right now? Thoughts?
Well, I don't know if it necessarily means where we are, but I do know that, and also it's, those people are definitely the most vocal.
Mm-hmm.
It is the most vocal crowd. I don't think the people who tend to be more policy-minded are, the more wonkish you are,
Mm-hmm.
the less fire and brimstone you tend to be in your. So I don't know. I agree that probably there's a large amount, or significant amount, I should say, a significant amount of people's potential
Fervor?
voting predilection will hinge on that. It's more of a no vote than a yes vote. So
Right.
Yeah, I totally recognize that. I don't want to really speculate on what percentage of the electorate.
But whatever percentage it is, it's very vocal.
Definitely very vocal. Yeah. And grabbing the mic more and more.
Yep.
At each passing moment.
Yep. And I just want to say out to the world, that is, in my opinion, probably the worst way to have an election, is I'm not voting for anybody, I'm just kind of voting against people. And what I've read is that tends to lend towards low turnout. Is that oftentimes when it's against the other person, everyone will post on Facebook about how they're not going to vote for Donald Trump or they're not going to vote for Hillary Clinton. But then they tend to come out and turn out in lower numbers when you're voting against someone than when you're voting for someone. Mm-hmm. Now, who knows what will happen this election? It's certainly a little different than everything else, but that's a tendency. That seems to resonate. That seems logical in my brain. And so if it comes down to turnout, I get more resonance, more people that actually are for Trump than people that are vehemently and fervently for Hillary Clinton. Bernie had very strong support, and the people who were for Bernie were very much for Bernie. And that was one thing that I was a big fan of, is that the people who wanted him to get in were very much for him. And I get a lot less of that for Hillary.
You know what? I could counter that and say that a lot of the people who are vehemently for Trump are also doing it as a no. It is that kind of, I hate it. There's an anarchic element of screw the establishment,
Yep.
screw mainstream. He's talking it like it is. And I look at, there's probably a good portion of that could be qualified as it's a no vote. They don't really.
It's no to status quo
Press them
more
to be
so
like-
than no to Hillary.
You press them and be like, well, what do you like about him? Well, he's not like the other. He's not a traditional candidate. No. Get past that kind of jingoistic
Right.
speech and tell me what is policy-wise. What do you like? Well, it's less so his policy than, he's not. And I'm like, okay, you keep using not, no, isn't. You're
Right. What is
using
he
negating
for
terms.
that you support? Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
you could say that a lot of the people who are pro-Trump are pro-Trump because he's it's a no vote to other things.
And as much a no vote to the establishment as anything else.
Right, exactly
Right.
what I'm saying.
It's a no vote to the establishment as much as it's a no vote to Hillary.
And then you can press them further and be like, what does the establishment mean? Well, it's, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, that sounds like the interests that Trump would represent. What you're chasing your tail here. I don't know what's going on here.
And that takes me to another, is this a turning point in our country? Do you feel like this is, whichever way this election goes, is it going to steer where our country ends up 5-10 years from now?
Yes, but I'm going to wait. It'll steer it. Imagine the U.S. is like a giant boat. It's a big ship
Yep.
moving through the ocean. And as we all know from movies like Titanic, it's hard to turn a
Right.
large boat quickly.
Right.
You can only throw the rudder and start to readjust the ship to a certain
Right.
direction.
Right.
So does every election have the potential to shift the rudder? Absolutely, but that doesn't result in my opinion, and you know me, I'm a pragmatist, and the chances of it causing the ship to capsize or to completely, go completely off course and run aground the rocks
Right.
is very slim.
Right.
Just because of the nature of the beast, because of checks and balance, because every 2 years we have a midterm election
For the lawmakers, yeah.
for the lawmakers. So, can it have potential impact in the next 5 to 10 years? Absolutely.
But I kind of feel like if Hillary gets elected, it's going to be a more gentle turn towards whatever it is that she is, and in the direction that Obama's been attempting to turn, right?
Right.
Towards socialized medicine, towards a strong safety net, towards a centralistic concept of what our country is supposed to be, and a centralistic ideology. And I feel like it's a more gentle turn. It may or may not be the direction you want to turn, but it's a more gentle one. And I feel like Trump, the day he walks in, is going to do everything he can to hard over on that rudder. Mm-hmm. Right? As much as he possibly can to turn that rudder as hard as he can get away with turning.
So if anything, maybe it's capsize the ship, but maybe he's going to fuck up the engines.
Right, he could certainly blow up the engine, and you lose your drive that you're
Yeah.
moving forward. But really, in the recent history, we haven't had a strong drive. Our country has not been. We haven't been gaining market share in a lot of the places around the world. We've been riding the wave. In my opinion, we've been riding the waves to
Yeah.
a certain extent, right? And the whole world has not been. Gaining in productivity. Our productivity numbers have not been increasing recently. The market share of the United States companies have not been strengthening because we've been diversifying to other countries, and the growth has been typically in the Chinas, Indias, Brazil,
Sure.
Russia, those kinds of places around the world.
But let's negate a myth that, and this is where I think the post-war era for the U.S. was unique.
Yes.
When you had Europe coming out of not one but two You had the First World War, you had a depression, then you had a Second World War. Europe is basically on its knees, and it's going to take a while to recover.
Yep.
Whereas you had a U.S. that had to nationalize its industry to really focus to an effort. So suddenly you're expanding the workforce, you're building this infrastructure for it, and you didn't get bombed the shit out of.
Right.
Or suddenly find yourselves the front lines of the Cold War.
Right.
So that era, we had a great opportunity to, and we took advantage of that period.
Yep.
It's kind of, I feel, wrong-footed to be blaming. What do we want another? We want Europe to go to another world war so that we can kind of sit back, let the competition knock each other out. Do we want China and India to suddenly go to war?
Yeah, but it isn't the stuff that's going on in Russia a bit of that war, right? And the economic engines that happen over there with the amount of natural gas that's going on out of the Ukraine and out of Russia, and the animosity that's going on between Russia and Europe. If we're able to get LNG, if we're able to get liquefied natural gas out of our country and send it to Japan and to Germany and those other places in Europe, suddenly we're going to have a whole nother resource boon because of what we can produce from fracking. And that allows us to ride another wave of basically virtually free money that just shows up on our doorstep.
As long as we don't suffer from, what's it called, the Dutch oil disease, they called it, like when suddenly you have there's a negative, a knock-on effect from having a explosion in your oil industry on the rest of the economy in general.
Oh, because then all the smart people move to one thing and you stop doing everything else.
Yeah, it can actually have a really negative effect on your. I think it's called we'll have to look it up and put it in the show notes. Those mythical show notes that we never seem to get around.
Don't bring that up. Don't bring that up.
Yeah.
We have a lot of hits on our show notes.
Yeah, or maybe it's Norwegian oil disease. I can't remember, but there's some expression for. We'll find it. Maybe
we
it's
will
actually
find
Norway.
it. We will share it with you, our listeners.
Yeah, I think this is where it's important to have economists on this show and also in your cabinet, because the people who are looking at the long
haul of it all.
The long haul of it all.
Yep.
It's why I always like the fact that, even though the returns have not been very good, I always thought over the long run, I think the whole concept of hedge funds, where the manager has to have the manager of a hedge fund, a certain percentage of his
own
earnings,
skin.
Own skin is in that game.
Yeah.
So that there's a little bit of that kind of self-check.
Right.
Wow, we're all over the place right now.
We are. That's
Folks,
okay.
we haven't done this in a long time. The muscles are soft.
Well, you say muscles are soft. There's really just a lot we need to share.
There's a lot.
There is a lot that we need to share, and so that takes me to a point that I've been espousing with people that I discuss this with. You say everybody's voting against this or against that or against the other thing. What about the concept of moving to what the electorate, more typically, in my opinion, really wants, which is something that is not. I liken the two traditional parties, Republicans and Democrats, to be versions of the same truth. They both really are bought into the system and the bureaucracy that our government currently works in. And so to me, that there is a place in this world, there's a place in our country for both the libertarians and the Greens and the other single-issue parties that exist out there. And I'm getting a lot of fodder on social medias recently that the libertarian is getting some actual traction. Do you feel like this is an election where we can get a Gary Johnson from an established third party to get 15% of the electorate?
Possibly. I think, speaking of long-term plans, I want, and I know he has touched a little bit about the, saying that getting to 15 is important, but really explaining and educating to the public, not just what that means, but where you go next from that. Because here's where I feel like, and I'm not the first one to coin this, but I agree with it, is that presently, it feels like every 4 years, the Greens and the Libertarians do a publicity stunt, which is running for president. And then I don't hear from them again until the next presidential election, when suddenly they're running for president. And it feels like this is where I go from a pragmatist to being a pessimist and thinking, is this just an attention grab, get some money, for your party, and then and then disappear until your next time you get the pass the plate.
Right. And they have to put up candidates for dog catcher and for school board and for local city council.
I mean, for God's sake,
in order for them to be serious.
I know that we joked about this a few months ago, but the Whig Party, there's a reconstituted Whig Party, and they won an election for something like the commissioner of elections for a county in Pennsylvania or something. But at least I knew they got a position.
Right.
You got to start somewhere. So yeah. Because I want to believe that at least some strategists in those parties have visions of doing that, and maybe they are articulating that, but they need to keep articulating and explaining so that it doesn't seem. Because right now I'm like, seems like it's a pointless vote unless you explain. Because otherwise it's because I could say it's just a protest vote. Like, I don't like the mainstream party, so I'm going to vote for this, even though I know it's not going to do anything. It seems like it's a protest vote, unless you can say clearly and consistently and over time and time what is the long.
So to me,
plan?
For me in the third party world, right, and I'm very. I'm very sensitive to third party. I kind of feel like it resonates with me, is that if you get the third party to 15%, then they are considered viable for every future presidential election. And if they get to that point in one, maybe two presidential elections in a row, then all of a sudden people who don't necessarily prescribe to the two major parties could certainly join on to a third party, and it would seem viable to run for local elected office. Right, but you have to have somebody at the top that makes it show up in the in the national discourse.
So
right?
it's like a Johnson victory is not obviously winning the presidency, but is
that would be a victory.
Well, yes, we'll get realistic. The realistic victory is not winning the presidency, but getting a Jesse Ventura situation.
Jesse Ventura. Okay, so what party was he?
He was Reform Party.
Okay. But Jesse, he won a governor. He won a governorship.
Yeah.
Right.
And doing so by riding on the tails of Ross Perot.
Right.
In two presidential elections. Yeah, he had a dip down in the second round, but.
Right, but to me, that's where you create a third party that's viable, and to me, that's the rudder that moves the two main parties, right?
So for the third parties to really start to try, and this is a criticism I have the Democrats as well, because they're kind of falling into this problem, is you need to exist beyond the face. Like I need to be able to like name multiple.
Yep.
Libertarian people in
right.
leadership in the administration, or
right.
Greens,
right.
for that matter. I mentioned the Democrats is because my biggest concern for them is that you've got boomers, and that's about it. And then some really,
and then you got some Bernies.
People.
Yeah, you got some Bernies and boomers.
You got Bernies and boomers. Not so much the people in their 40s.
That's right.
And early 50s. Whereas the Republicans I know I felt like I could probably rattle off a lot of senators and governors in their 40s and 50s.
Right.
So they have that nice middle,
right.
Which makes them healthier, I think, going forward in these elections.
It does. And by the way, the modern Whig Party, what is their mascot? You've got the donkey.
I know what it is.
And the elephant. And what is it for the Whigs? Wow! Tom,
it is an owl.
You blow my mind every time. Every time we are here.
Oh, thanks, man.
Your grasp of the political world is unparalleled.
Now, can I blow your mind with this next bit? I dropped this related to the current election. There's a really interesting article on The Economist about property sales in the in western Montana, Idaho, and eastern Washington / Oregon.
Right.
They're basically, it's the concept is people are buying property in the redoubt of that's kind of formed by the mountains there, because these are people who fully believe that the government is approaching collapse, and we all need, so they're building bunkers and
Got
and
it.
a compound. They didn't want to be in the Dakotas because they said that it was too easy for military vehicles to move through. So they're buying property out. Apparently, in big enough numbers that there's been a property boom.
Wow.
So I ask, I'm not going out there because
Uh-huh.
this is not Red Dawn.
Right?
But are you going to be picking up a pamphlet yourself, Jeff?
I might buy a timeshare. Do they have timeshares?
1 week a year, I can escape the
freedom.
military state. Oh, jeez.
That would be hilarious. I can't wait for them to put up a high-rise with a moat out front, right? Pillboxes, right? You pay your condo fee, which really pays for the military presence outside of the condo.
Don't think you can have a bunker of your own on the salary you make? Consider buying a timeshare bunker.
Oh, God. Okay, so that takes me to the other... should we stay serious here for a minute?
We can stay serious and
All right.
throw
So
that next one down.
the other serious is the Black Lives Matter movement. And really, I get a different perspective on this year than I would have gotten 5 years ago. Because right now I live in downtown Atlanta. And so when Black Lives Matter were doing quite a few protest marches here in downtown, they literally walked in front of my house. Right? So I got a real good view of who it is that was showing up, what it was that they were saying, and, you know, a good vibe for what it is. And in Atlanta, in the ones that I actually physically saw, which I can give you a personal account of, it was not very... The mix of people had a lot more what looked to be children of the suburbs that have moved into town than I would have expected. It was probably 40% that appeared to be children of the suburbs, that looked like they came from privilege, moved into town, and jumped onto a movement. That being said, there is a lot of validity from what I've actually seen in the inner workings of what it is in the police state, and how there is an inequity of prosecution and inequity of execution of the law, and who it is that gets police attention in places that wouldn't be shown off in the news, if you will. You don't show certain sections of town that are, you know, what that city is, and you don't show them to tourists and all that kind of stuff. And in those places where I am not too far away from, I feel the inequity of prosecution of the rules, which is a little... I mean, it makes sense to me as to why people feel like there needs to be something done.
City living has affected you, right?
City living has affected me.
And I think that's, you know, might be, you know, to your point of, I don't like the word jumping on, because that sounds like, you know, it's just like, I could ask, are you saying that these suburban transplants to the city are treating it like a fad?
I feel like they are treating it as a cause that they are volunteering for.
Okay.
Almost, right? So it feels like they are doing their philanthropy by getting in their hippie clothes and showing up for the Black Lives Matter march.
Or could they just be like what sounds like you know, they moved to the city, became aware of the privilege that they had experienced of being suburban, not, you know, I assume when you say children of suburbanites, you are... I assume
typically
you mean young
white, obviously came from a place where they didn't want for anything when they were young, and you kind of get that vibe from somebody. And I didn't interview all of them, but that's the vibe you get.
So maybe they went through, like you said yourself, where you were 5 years ago is different from where you are now on the issue. So perhaps they had that same trajectory as well. You know?
Perhaps.
And
I will say that I marched for a couple of blocks with 2 or 3 of the marches, just to show a little bit of solidarity.
Right on. That's, you know, that's what, you know, what's at the I'm gonna screw up the expression. Is like, you know, it's like moving away from. Oh yeah, someone said, you know, I think it was Black Lives Matter doesn't need allies, doesn't need white allies. the co-conspirators. It's like a little bit of ally is like, like, oh yeah, I support you. Co-conspirator is like moving beyond that and I'm going to work beside you to. I'm not going to take over. I'm not going to try to own the movement and become the white savior.
Right.
But I want to be that co-conspirator.
Right. Well, to me, the most valuable thing that I can do to help out is just speak about it in my circles who don't get the same types of interactions that everybody else does. And to have the perspective that I've got in the circles that I already am in, right? Mm-hmm. Which is the thing that they don't... I mean... Every group of people, every person has a certain circle that they go in, and they tend to be resonance chambers for whatever it is that they already have. And so to be an ally, to me, the most powerful way to be that is to just to bridge some of that gap, to resonate the things that I hear in my neighborhood to other people. And people look at me and go, "You moved downtown?" And I tell them exactly where I moved downtown, and they're like, "Aren't you scared to go to your car and all that kind of stuff?" And I'm like, no, they're people, just like you and me.
They're people.
They're just people.
People are people.
Right. People are people. And some of them don't shower enough, and some of them do, right? And some of them have nasty things to say, and some of them are really lovely people. So they're just people, right?
I don't know where the showering came from. Is it because it's summer and...
Summer brings out the best in us.
Some days it's rank outside. I'm just going to say. Some days it is rank. So that takes me to another thing I just want to touch on that pisses me off to all ends, right? Oh. This is not a thing that pissed Tom off that shouldn't. This is a thing that pissed Jeff off because he thinks it's righteous. The power of the prosecutor. The prosecutor in this country, the local district prosecutor or whatever, has huge amounts of power over what laws are enforced, how much those rules cost somebody in both dollars and time and energy and all these kinds of things. And I just feel like we are doing a disservice to our citizenry to spend so much time in the courts, because most cases, something like 90-some% of cases, are settled out of court. And the reason is because...
Don't quote us on that number.
Sure. The number is certainly wrong, but it's it's more than 1%, less than 100%. And I believe it's somewhere very, very high.
Okay.
But the point is that so many the rules have been set so that if you are found guilty in a court of law, then the judge has so much push to a huge sentence for some simple crimes that people would rather try their luck with the prosecutor and take the small fine or the reasonably large fine. Think about a traffic citation. And you go in there and you didn't really run the red light, but the cop says you did, and the prosecutor says, all right, well, for $200 and court fees, then you'll be done with this thing. Most people would just take that, even though they don't feel like they were done right in justice, because then you have to pay for a lawyer and you have to show up 4 different times to court and all these kinds of things. I recently got a speeding ticket where I didn't think I was speeding and I thought he clocked somebody else, but I would have had to drive out to Louisiana 4 times or just pay the $180 and be done with it.
Right.
So you pay the money. And the power of the prosecutor shows again in all of this Black Lives Matter stuff in the fact that it disproportionately laws are executed on those people who don't have the means to fight.
Yeah, because imagine if that $180 is huge to you or significant.
Right,
to
that
you.
would mean you can or can't pay your mortgage that month.
Or you suddenly lose your license gets revoked because you can't fight the points on it, and now you don't have the ability to get to work, and so suddenly that,
So my point there is that the power of the prosecutor is too high, and that all citizens should just take everything to court. If we did that for 2 years, all of the laws would change because the courts would be so bogged down that if nobody paid their traffic tickets, everybody took them to a jury trial. Just go to every single thing and take it to a jury trial. Then you can't have the number of laws that we have, and you can't have the amount of penalties that you got.
Have you followed the situation in Missouri with the public defendant system, that apparently the public defendant system is so overburdened
Yeah.
that the I can't remember his title. The person who oversees it, he basically he enacted a rule, an emergency rule that allows him to draft members of the Missouri Law Board.
Oh, wow.
To as an emergency public defendants, and so the first person he sent a letter to was the governor.
Because he's a member of the bar.
Because he's a member of the bar, and
Right.
I guess had for years they've been saying we need more money for public defendants, and they're like, no. In fact, we're going to cut the amount. And so he's like, all right, fine. We need more public defendants. I'm enacting this rule, and the first one I'm tapping. Here's your case. Send him a case that he has to that he's been assigned as a public defendant. I was like, that's. I was like,
Awesome.
I got the popcorn. I'm like, oh, I got to see how this plays out.
See how this goes. That's
This is
awesome.
going fascinating.
That's awesome. Yeah, I look
right.
forward to seeing how that works. And speaking on plays out, I have been addicted to the recent craze Pokemon Go. Have you played?
No.
You haven't played Pokemon Go at all?
I have. I'm. What am I talking about? Yes, I have. I have
Okay.
played it.
And you're not a big fan?
No, I think it's great. I think it's I'm so glad that it's getting people out of the house. I saw it, a great video of some grown men who lived in the Philadelphia area, and they're like, I've never been to famous pizza place, and we went there and had a slice, and then we walked around, the Rocky statue, and so yeah, that exploration element that people seem to be getting out of it, and also community. The more and more I'm hearing about people, I've seen people in groups walking around. I'm like, oh, those dudes are playing it.
Yep, and I'll tell you from personal experience, walking around my town, my local blocks, used to be most of the people you saw on the streets, you didn't feel like they had a 9-to-5 job. Now, 20 to 30% of the people you see walking around feel like they have a 9-to-5 job. I don't know if that's really the truth or not, but you're getting a lot more people that you would have felt like are the quintessential professionals of the world showing up in places in the town where they used to not ever show up, which makes it feel that much safer to walk around the town that I am in, which is great, getting more people to experience more parts of the city that they didn't used to go to. People get into a rut, and Pokemon is one more avenue that gets people out of a rut and goes to places that they don't typically go in their own town, which is not that far away. I found myself going to places that I've never gone to.
Because you're tracking down a hot Pokemon lead.
Oh, talking about Kate when that happens. Nice.
Wow.
Wah, wah. So Pokemon is a plus to our society, and yes, people have plowed into trees whenever they were driving, playing Pokemon, but the same thing happened to people when they were playing, Candy Crush Saga or doing Google Maps navigation and driving off a cliff. Stupid people are going to be stupid people, and you can't blame the tool that makes them stupid. You have to blame them for their own idiocracy.
They're cheating anyway. You're supposed to be walking around. Pokemon trainers don't drive.
They're supposed to walk. But my beef with the whole thing is there's too much in cities. It is very city-centric.
Yeah.
Right? There's not enough, because the concept that I've read and seen about Pokemon is that you traipse through the woods to find these Pokemons. Right? The
Are you talking about
original
the show?
game,
Like the show and the game? Yeah.
the original games and the
Pokemon
original
Red.
show, there was a lot of it that was out in the woods, right? And so it was supposed to drive people out to the wilderness, if you will. And so there's not enough of it out there. Every time I've been out away from the major city, it's like a ghost town for Pokemon. Which comes to the Google thing, because really Google's running the whole thing, and they're just trying to get maps of the inside of buildings.
Can also do the beef, which is the whole all those people. I don't feel bad because you didn't read a simple Google search would have saved you from the stupid. But all the people who lost a lot of money in the stock market. So when this game came out and was exploding, at one point it had more daily users than Twitter and other things,
Facebook
combined.
and everything else. Yeah.
Like it's insane, and still is pulling in great numbers. So obviously a lot of people looked at this and were like, oh wow, I got to get in on this action, so I'm going to drop a lot of money into Nintendo. Nintendo's stock price shot up, but then Nintendo reported their earnings, which weren't that great. There was confusion, and the stock plummeted. Like it went past its original mark. And the reason is, Nintendo is only a part owner. You've got
They're not even really that big of a part owner.
Yeah. It's not. Their piece of the pie was first off, people thought they owned the pie. No, they're sharing it, and their piece wasn't as big even then as people might have expected it. So I feel bad for Nintendo because people looked at them like they were assholes. But the people who invested money, dude, could you have done it? This is your money you're investing, so.
That's right.
I would take a few minutes to search, and a quick Google search would have explained to you the order of ownership with this property.
That's it.
Silly. Ooh,
Who is it that owns Pokemon?
Well, there's the Pokemon Group, which is I think they own the biggest piece. Then there's Niantic, the developer of the software,
Right.
And then I think Nintendo falls third in that. But so I think there is a company just called the Pokemon Corporation. I want to say. We could look it up.
30 would go to Apple, but we presume out of every 100 units earned in the App Store, 30 would go to Apple, 30 to Niantic, and 30 to Pokemon, and 10 to Nintendo.
10 to Nintendo.
That's
Yeah.
kind of where I feel like they lay on the thing, because they're really just being paid for the intellectual property of all of these Pokemon characters.
Yeah, but I think that's even more owned by the Pokemon Group.
Got it.
Yeah, which is, I guess, Pokemon Group is actually a collaborative of 3 businesses: Nintendo, Game Freak, and Creatures. So yeah, it was a little bit of, my friends, if you're trying to turn a quick buck, you're probably gonna get burned, and don't blame anyone but yourself.
That's
but
it.
also, if you're planning to make a quick buck, do a little bit of Google research first, man.
I'll introduce you to the site called letmegooglethatforyou.com.
Exactly. So something that I highly encourage everyone to Google.
Uh-huh.
I put a link in the notes. So I don't know how I came across this, but there's a fetish now called an ovipositor, and apparently, maybe we can throw it up on the screen. Maybe we won't, because maybe that gets taken down. But apparently the fetish is people who enjoy the sensation of having... Yeah, Jeff apparently is watching the video, I think. Don't worry, the video isn't actually showing someone doing it to themselves, just showing you the apparatus that you would use for this. But it's of people who enjoy the sensation of... the concept of an alien or giant insect laying eggs inside of you, and so it's for lack of better words, a dildo-like object which people use to secrete gelatin eggs inside their orifice of choice, which apparently the heat of your body dissolves the gelatin, so it kind of comes out as a goo. Yeah, I thought it was just like, oh, is this like anal beads or something? I was like, oh no, this is gelatin that eventually will break
dissolve
down
inside of you
and come out as a gooey mess.
Wow.
I read it. I think the link I posted is an interview with the creator, right? Who actually seems very pragmatic. He seems like very kind of like, hey, people are just always looking for new sensations and things that are going to be safe for them and do no harm to anyone. And I was like, hey, you're on the level, man. This thing freaks me the hell out. Because I don't want aliens laying eggs inside my body.
Nope. The eggs are firm but rubbery, similar to the consistency of gummy bears.
So yeah, I don't want to stick giant gummy bears up my hoo-hoo.
Anything. Up my anything, really.
Yeah, so ovipositor.
Wow. Ovipositor. That is a thing.
Yeah, that is a thing. You can go online and watch a demonstration video.
Wow.
And
the Rule 34 applies one more time.
Oh my God.
So let's go to some other shit show. The Olympics here in Rio, which has been both glorious. No. But the Olympics have been quite a few things that have been going on. There's a lot of news articles about how horrible many things are in Rio. But then when you actually watch the NBC Olympic coverage, it seems like everything's shiny and okay. So, as a dumb American, what am I supposed to know?
Well, I read a really nice New York Times, I think, article that was a person kind of speaking to that of like, what's the real experience outside the camera?
Yep.
And one of the lines, and I'm going to totally screw it up, but he said, he goes, Rio right now it's like the most dangerous city where you still feel okay. Like made some kind of level of like, he was like, or he goes, it feels safe until you talk to a local, who then the local will basically start to point out all the, oh, you see those two, it's like, oh, this is a lovely scene. And the local was like, yeah, actually, those two flats are rival drug gangs. And sometimes they like to shoot between buildings. And you're like, oh, okay. So there's a nice veneer. I think he said it feels edgy and a little bit sketchy, but there's 35,000 troops, I want to say. There's like an inordinate amount of soldiers.
Wow.
On the streets. Some people have been robbed, but people get robbed here.
Right.
And obviously, if you're a tourist traveling from on an international ticket, people are probably like, you make a happy target. Have there been some problems with the water? Yes, the diving pool turned green.
Yes.
But I think for the most part, and I'm happy for them because I didn't want to see. Because we can talk about the corruption of the Brazilian government.
Till we're blue in the face, because there's a million things to talk about there.
But the people of Brazil, the Rio specifically, who have had to deal with all the build up to this, and are right now having to deal with 3 weeks of traffic congestion and roads being blocked off and this, that, and the other. For them, I was really hoping nothing bad would happen.
Right. And that goes down to the Zika stuff, because there is Zika that exists in Rio, and there were big concerns about what was going on with Zika in Rio, right? But the international committees or whatever have allowed the Olympics to go on, even though Zika is certainly present in Rio. But yet the CDC, as soon as there were 2 cases found in Miami, put a travel advisory on Miami. Mm-hmm. The CDC here in the United States said don't travel to Miami unless you absolutely need to. But they did not put that travel advisory on Rio, which had many more cases.
There was, the medical community was making recommendations. Zika has been on the decline in Brazil.
Oh, has it?
Yes, has been on the decline.
Nice.
Can't say the same for Miami.
Right.
Bad joke. Tasteless joke, Tom. You think I would have learned tact in these months?
No, you've been hanging out with me for the last 5 minutes, and it takes away all of your tact.
Yeah, that's
I'm like a tact drain.
Exactly, a detector.
A detector.
Detectified. Yeah, that's something that the media really hasn't been talked about. But I read some article that was saying that Zika incidents in Brazil have actually been on a decline since a peak from a while back. So I don't know if it's the season or if it's measures they've been taking to combat. They've been doing eradication or things like that. But yeah, it's been on decline. I don't know if the CDC did or did not, and if they didn't, why they didn't make a recommendation. But I do know that coaching organizations and doctors were making warnings.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of statements of be careful, many statements of be careful, but no statements of don't go.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas Miami got a statement of don't go. Unless you absolutely have to. Right. And if you don't have to go to Rio, nobody has to go to witness the Olympic Games.
Right.
Right? So it would have been a travel advisory that would have emptied the stands, really, if people followed the travel advisory.
If they follow the travel advisory. But an advisory is an advisory. This isn't an embargo.
Correct. It's not a force, but it would have certainly reduced the number of people.
$10,000 fine if they find a Brazil stamp in my...
Do you have a home phone?
No, I think that's Prairie Home Companion.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Got it. Understood now.
We are so mayonnaise over here.
Wow.
Yeah.
So much going on right there. So let's speak about another piece of craziness that's going on. Yes. So Google Fiber is happening in Atlanta. They are actually releasing it in the next 40. There's actually maybe 12, 15 buildings that have it right now. And in the next 50 days, it should be 3 large neighborhoods that will have it in Atlanta in the next 50 days, which will be great. But apparently, on average, every single day, Google Fiber has broken 1 gas line in Atlanta in their rollout because they're having to dig to do it. And so they're bumping into gas lines, and because the gas lines are kind of old, they're breaking some of them. And on average, it's one per day. And in one day, they broke 5 gas lines.
Has there been any injuries or?
No, I mean, it's easily shut off, and, you
Okay.
just have to then go and reroute stuff and
Jeez.
blah, blah, blah. But it's a bunch of extra work.
Yeah.
So that's crazy. But I do want to move now because my area will eventually have it, but it's not going to be there right this moment. So I don't know how long. It's maybe a year. It may be another 3 months. Who knows? But now I'm
So
starting
you
to...
would move to a fiber neighborhood from your current place,
Yeah.
even if it's going to be like a year until like your building or neighborhood might
Yeah, but, it'd be okay for me. I'm not, like, completely beholden to where I am anyway. I mean, it's
Alright.
good, but it's not great. Does that make any sense?
Makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, it's a 7 on the 1 to 10 scale, so there's certainly room to
Alright.
improve.
all right.
So that's my thought. And then you got, don't we have a recurring theme that it's time for?
Yes.
Bum,
It's
bum,
pulled
bum.
this out of my. This is everyone's favorite things that piss Tom off that shouldn't probably piss Tom off. That shouldn't piss Tom off. This one's a funny one. I just kind of like yanked it out of my ovipositor. It's Jurassic World. I watched Jurassic World last night.
Uh-huh.
I'd never seen it before.
Okay. Did you watch it in theater or at home?
I watched it at home.
Okay.
It's August 2016. I think that's been out of theaters for a year. When did it come out? Last summer?
Yeah, it's probably last summer. I thought you might have seen a dollar
At a dollar
matinee or
theater?
something. Yeah.
No. It was at home.
Okay.
And all right, movie. You're not allowed. First off, it was a fine movie. I had fun. I enjoyed it. Have you seen it?
Yep.
Okay, so you'll be able to know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So here's the thing: is you don't get to have it both ways. So there's a running joke in the movie that they make, or not a running joke, but there's a scene where a character, the kind of a control guy, he's making fun of the corporate sponsorship of dinosaurs. He's like, "Oh, why don't you just make it, Taco Soar, the Burger King Gasaurus Rex." He's making fun of the corporatization,
Right.
of the park.
Right.
And and there's a little bit of that kind of, oh yeah, it's sell, buy. Okay, so there's this criticism.
Right.
Then they cut to like a scene where the woman's driving off to find Chris Pratt, and she's driving her Mercedes Benz, and the camera swoops in as it's taking the corners, smoothly, and it looks like a damn car commercial.
Yep.
And then when she parks, they always parked it at kind of a 2/3 angle.
Right.
So you got the front of the car, but also the side. So you got a
Right.
little bit of the profile in the front.
Right.
Always.
Right. Which
car
is
was
the same
always
way you
parked.
park in a car commercial.
Exactly.
Yep.
And there was a few other instances. Oh yeah, the Chris Pratt, of course, is like working on his motorcycle, drinking a ice cold Coca-Cola from a bottle, and right after the woman got out of the Mercedes Benz, and I'm like, all right, you don't get to have this kind of character who criticizes, the corporatization of the park, and then proceed to have some blatant product placements in your own movie. No movie. Bad movie. I'm going to roll up the newspaper and hit you on the nose.
So, do you think what happened there was that the producers, the money people in the movie, took money for the product placements, and then the writers went, "Oh, come on, man, you can't do that to our movie," and they went, "Nope, it's going in there," and then the writers said, "You know what? Fuck you. We're going to add some lyrics in there talking about how ridiculous it would be to have product
if
placement."
that's the truth, I take back my pissed off. But I don't know. That's really giving.
Oh, it's a stretch.
It's really giving a movie with 4 writers credit. That makes sense. But yeah, I was a little pissed off at that last night. I was like, no, you don't get to have it both ways.
Right. Heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that movie, although fun, is certainly not deep. It's certainly a kiddie
No.
pool of feel goods.
It's better than 3. It's better than
Yep.
Jurassic Park 3. I'm toss up if it's better than 2 or not. I have to probably rewatch 2.
Right.
Although I gotta say, the monster fight at the end, it felt like Godzilla type
It did feel like Godzilla
with the two.
type. Yep.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, this is like some Godzilla meets Rodan or something.
You
I'm
have to
digging it.
drop reality, but once you drop reality,
Yeah.
it's fun. It's fun. Yeah, exactly.
All right,
Exactly.
man.
All right, well, thanks everybody for joining us. I've seen quite a few viewers throughout the endeavor, and so I'd like to thank our viewers for watching us. I'd like to thank my co-host for making time in his busy schedule to be in here with me, and I hope to continue this. We have so many things that we can talk about. Yes. We have so many things to think about, and we have so many things that we've told you. But we're going to ask you that you don't have to think like me.
And you don't have to think like me.
But we ask you to think.